Today I'm going to talk about ABBA. I know I mostly talk about new music. I mostly talk about hip hop, but I want to talk about ABBA, and it's a video for two different audiences: for like the super fans, and for the people who don't know ABBA at all, or like know the name but don't know anything about them. So I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to provide something of a review for this book, which the publisher inexplicably but quite gladly sent me a little while ago, Melancholy Undercover: The Story of ABBA. But more importantly, I'm going to be trying to show you or tell you how I got into ABBA, how I learned to love them, and how you can too. Because maybe you don't know them, but like honestly, and I'm saying this as a part-time music critic, they are as good as any band that has ever existed. They really are. Like there are bands, okay, there are bands that are better, but if there's like a tier list of like music groups, they are S tier, absolutely. But it can be tricky because their music is so omnipresent; it's everywhere. Now, for me, it was a little bit different because when I grew up in the late '80s and the '90s, and basically no one was talking about ABBA for a good period of time up until their Greatest Hits CD came out. So like I wasn't really aware of who they were, and then the Greatest Hits CD came out, and all the kind of like older Gen Xers were talking about how great they were, and the same kind of thing happened with Kiss, where they were just these bands that just like I was too young to really understand what they were. But fortunately, I had a Swedish friend. Okay, I had a Swedish friend named Annika. That's probably is pronounced Annika now that I think about it. And she would tell me how great ABBA was. And she lent me a CD. She lent me this CD in 1996. It's almost 30 years now I've not returned this CD. I've sent her multiple messages about it. We talk on Facebook. I think she's okay with me having it. But this was what she lent me. Not ABBA Gold, which was their biggest selling album ever, the album that resuscitated their career in the 90s, 10 years after they released an album. But it was this. It was more ABBA Gold. So it's like the greatest hits, but like not the greatest hits. Dancing Queen's not on here. But it was track 3. I listened to this. I remember where I was. I was in my dorm room in the Clark dormitory of Wheaton College, okay? I remember where I was, and I pressed play, and the first song was Summer Night City. I'm like, all right, that's fine. And then Angel Eyes, okay, that's pretty good. But then track 3, The Day Before You Came. This, all of a sudden, I understood. Like, I understood on some really deep level that this is some really great, deep band. And the cool thing is, the reason I really want to do this video now instead of the Ethel Cain video, which I will do, I just need more time, it's a deep album. The first chapter of this book is called The Day Before You Came. The first chapter of this book, the thesis statement of this entire excellent new biography / meditation on the importance of ABBA, is based on that song, the song that I heard as like a, I don't know, 19-year-old or 20-year-old or 21-year-old, whatever it was, just kind of sitting there, never really knowing about ABBA, and all of a sudden, like, I understood. It was the clarity. And what was important, and this is when you understand it, when you see it, you will see it. When you hear it, you will hear it. They are known as bright and bubbly with the two blonde singers and the two super beardo songwriters and all that. And you think of Dancing Queen, you think of Mamma Mia, and you think of Meryl Streep and what's her name, the pretty lady who's in the Mamma Mia movie. You think of all of them, but it's melancholy. That's the secret. That's what this whole book is based on. The sadness. The pensive sadness, that's how you could describe melancholy, that is pervasive in ABBA's music, that goes along, that makes all of their music always bittersweet. It's never just sweet, it's also always bitter. It's always there, even in their big hits. Even Dancing Queen has these little sad notes in it, in the lyrics and in the music. Even Mamma Mia, the whole thing, like, it's, once you understand it, it gives them such a power. Because they're so bright, so poppy, so well written, so everything you think of with 70s disco and and synthesizers and doo-dee. But underneath it is this deep, deep sadness. And it's very clear in this song, and it's very clear in this opening chapter. Now, what is the song The Day Before You Came? It was the final song they recorded. Okay. They got back together again 3 years ago. So for all intents and purposes, in 1982, they broke up. They never officially broke up, but they stopped playing music between 1992 and 2022. Okay, that's quite a long time. 1982 and 2022, that's a long time. So it's the final song they recorded in their first run. And it's a love story. It's a love story with no lover. Do you understand the kind of thing they're on right here? Bing bop, boom. Do you understand the kind of thinking, the kind of thing that they're on here? The song is called The Day Before You Came because it is a narration of the life of this woman before this man enters her life, before the great love of her life enters and makes himself known to her. But we have no idea who he is, what he looks like, how they meet, what their relationship is like. He is completely absent from the song except as an idea. So she's remembering what it was. She's trying to vaguely piece together the banality, the drudgery of her life before he showed up. And this is that melancholy, okay? Because the life that she's describing is a young urban professional who goes to work and has lunch with her friends and, watches TV and reads books. But it's a horror story. The music is so epic. And it really could be, if you just listen to the theme song, it could be the theme song of a horror movie. And it's like, there's almost like a little theremin in there and these horror notes and everything builds up like these long, it's like a 6-minute song. It's supposed to be a single. It's like a 6-minute song. And it builds up with all these stories about all the things that she does throughout her day. And then it breaks up until the chorus, the hook, which is just saying the title, The Day Before You Came. Oh, these crazy vocalizations going on here and these minor notes. It's epic and it's sad. And what's crazy is how much it emphasizes that she doesn't even know that she's sad. How melancholy can you get than somebody trying to remember a day in their life to tell you that they didn't know how pointless their life was? That's the beauty of the song. What else does that do? What else does that do? What else does that do that we never know who the lover is? It means, in reality, we can read the song any way we want. Is it the lover who came? She never says, after this point, my life was good. It's implied, or more properly, you infer it, but it's actually never said. What if it's not a lover who arrives the next day? What if it is death? What if it is a murderer? This could be a soundtrack to a Friday the 13th movie, to a slasher movie. This could be her thinking about her entire life and how she wasted it, the sad, pathetic excuse of an existence, her pointless existence, as she says, the day before you came. You can read it either way. Frankly, given the way the music goes, this doesn't sound like a love song to me. This sounds like a story of a tragically boring life cut tragically short. Okay, that's what ABBA is. If that doesn't get you into it and you hear it and you hear how well it's played, I don't know what to tell you. These lyrics, the detail they go into. I must have left my house at 8 because I always do. Just trying to think about her life. I must have. With letters, and he talks about her job. I must have gone to lunch, the usual place, the usual bunch. And it must have rained the day before you came. She goes into her afternoon. I must have lit my 7th cigarette at 2:30. It's a lot of cigarettes, but that's okay. That's the way things were. And at the time, I never noticed I was blue. And she's talking about her routine. My favorite lyric in the whole song is, at 5 I must have left. There's no exception to the rule. There's no exception to the rule. Her life is just a rule. It's just a routine. It just keeps going. And she opens the door at 8 o'clock and she gets some Chinese food and she watches Dallas, which was a popular TV at the time. It's very much of its time. It's of its space. And she goes to bed after reading a book and there's just nothing. There's nothing to her life until this wonderful man, this wonderful woman, this terrible man, this terrible woman, death itself. So I'm just going to give you an example of what this book is like by reading some of the ways that it's described in here. Okay, I'm just going to kind of go through here. The Day Before You Came, a synthesizer ballad that is almost 6 minutes long. For 39 years, everyone assumed it would be their last recording. Pop singles are supposed to be short and distinct, 3 minutes or so. Few other pop groups with ABBA's track record would consider releasing a single almost twice that length with no real chorus. The music in The Day Before You Came, recorded at the end of the summer of 1982, is from Benny's Yamaha GX1, a polyphonic synthesizer with 3 keyboards and a built-in drum machine. This tells us that they were going to use a real drummer, but they decided not to. They recorded the real drummer, but they decided not to, so it would sound more cold and austere. Okay. Meanwhile, they go on and talk about all these little details of their life, and then they go back to the recording at the Polar Studios and who their manager was and how it was recorded during the last week of summer, but it sounds so wintry. The lyrics themselves. Okay, so the lyrics were written by Bjorn of ABBA. If you don't know, ABBA stands for ABBA, like they're members. So that's Agnetha, Benny, Bjorn, and then Frida, but her first name is Anne or something like that. The rarely discussed subject of the lyrics, Benny says Bjorn would intuitively capture the mood of his melodies. Bjorn maintains that any autobiographical interpretations of his lyrics are misguided. He doesn't write about himself, rather he writes about people and relationships, which is one reason their songs work so well in musicals. And it just keeps on going. The recording is sad, but the lyrics aren't really sad at all, which is an example of Bjorn's genius. And then there's a whole thing here about the restraint of the vocals of Agnetha. Agnetha's confounding restraint in singing The Day Before You Came makes the listener stop and notice each turn of phrase. What is going on there? Agnetha has a voice that could cut through glass and concrete, but here she is holding back. Thus she is transformed from Agnetha from ABBA to the woman of the lyrics. Benny has likened Agnetha's style on The Day Before You Came to a dimmer light switch dialed down to the lowest setting. The Day Before You Came was not very successful. The single reached number 1 in the Finnish charts and number 3 in Sweden. Two nations accustomed to darkness. Because that's the whole other thing. That's the whole other thing about Sweden, about all Scandinavia. They're famous for the sun and the sunshine and the bikini teams and all that, but also many, 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 many months of prolonged darkness. Okay? When Benny Andersson played The Day Before You Came, anyways, the song was originally called The Suffering Bird. The Suffering Bird. That's the original title of the song. Benny says, even happier songs are melancholic at the core. What we did was melancholy undercover, which is the title of the book. So listen, they sent me this book. They even sent me this disco ball that says, this reading queen loves ABBA, which is true. This reading queen does love ABBA. So I'll talk a little bit about the book, just as far as, I mean, I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know anything about them except that they were Swedish. That was it. Apparently one of the female members, his father was a Nazi soldier in Norway. So that's pretty interesting. This book talks a lot about like Swedish culture and the way it intersects with American culture. There's a fad called, or like a subculture called ragare, which is like American, basically Johnny Rockets, like people pretending it's the 50s and driving around, and some of their music started that way. One of them was in a style of music called dance band, which is so hard to describe that they spend like 4 pages in this book written by a Swede trying to describe dance band, and I still didn't even really understand what it was up until they said the song I do is dance band, and I said, okay, I understand that, because that song's always kind of bugged me. What's great about this book is that it's about them, but it's also about their influence and their impact, and it's not obnoxious. It's not like they were our generation, they were us growing up. It's not like that kind of cheesy stuff, which is fine. That stuff is fine, but like I'm not a big enough ABBA fan for that to matter, you know? What I love is the way they go through, and the way that Jan Gradval writes here. He's able to give you the facts, the kinds of biography that you're looking for, the stages of progress, but he mixes it in with enough like interviews, and he keeps it light enough that it's a very easy read, you know, and it's perfect because it has this undercurrent of melancholy which keeps popping up. It's a very well executed thesis. Focusing on the sadness of ABBA's music is like, once you do it, you understand that's the only way to understand their music. You know, this is a band of 4 people who were all married to each other and then all got divorced from each other. You know, there's a lot of happiness and sadness just built into that. I want to read another little section for you in here. Because as a straight man myself, I often I didn't really understand what ABBA was, and I sort of thought maybe they were just for gay people, because in America in the 90s, it wasn't really that clear. So I just want to read this because I think it's pretty well written. Right now, as you read the sentence, ABBA is being played in a gay club somewhere in the world, or at a bar, or a party full of LGBTQ people. If it isn't Dancing Queen, it's probably Gimme, Gimme, Gimme a Man After Midnight. These songs appear full of obvious gay references today, but Bjorn was completely unaware when he wrote the lyrics almost half a century ago. The gay community is where you will find ABBA's most fiercely loyal fans. And then it goes on to discuss an entire chapter the reasons why. Like, why did their music resonate with the gay population? How did it work? How did it evolve over time? How does that tie into the disco fad? Okay, all these things are in this book. A whole chapter on immigration and how many immigrants related to ABBA's music, despite the fact, they're just a bunch of Swedes apparently just singing happy music. The thing is, this is a band of 4 people who got divorced and never broke up. The band never broke up, and they had 2 divorces in the band. That's all you got to know about the insanity of ABBA. One thing I really appreciated was they showed the importance of this CD. Well, not this CD, the original ABBA Gold, not more ABBA Gold, but like they were able to really properly contextualize the fact that ABBA in popular consciousness had basically gone away, and then ABBA Gold just came back. And if you're like, Sky, what do I do? Their albums are great. But just get ABBA Gold and more ABBA Gold, or just listen to them. Just pull up ABBA Gold on Spotify, or whatever it is, and just put it on shuffle and just listen to the songwriting. It's unbelievable, their songwriting. And it's so catchy, and you know so many of the songs, but it doesn't matter because they're so well made and they can reach so many people. As a final word, I just want to say reading books about music is really underrated. So I love the music of Hank Williams, okay? Hank Williams Sr. is one of my favorite musicians that ever lived. I read this book before I listened to a single song by Hank Williams. I went to the Nashville, the Country Music Hall of Fame, and I could tell that if I wanted to understand country music on any level, I had to understand Hank Williams. So I had a couple days to kill, and I read this book, and then I bought a compilation of some of his saddest music, And, sorry, I just see a little note on here. 837, Grand Central, track 18. What was I doing in my life when I was reading this book? I don't remember going to Grand Central reading this book, but I guess I did. And I think you could do worse. So if you're out there and you're curious and you want to learn about music, get the story of ABBA and get ABBA's greatest hits and listen and read at the same time. Get Hank Williams and get I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, or some kind of compilation like that. And just open yourself up to these giants who sometimes are so giant you don't know how to approach them. You don't know how to possibly interact with them because their names are so loved. All right, there you go. I'm going to go back to listening probably to more ABBA, but then I'm going to get back to that Ethel Cain album. All right. Have you read the book? Are you an ABBA fan? Do you know the song, The Day Before You Came? Do you want me to sing it more? There's no exception to the rule. There's the camera.